That's right, you did win.
You guys don't know who he is, do you?
Wow.
There's the answer.
Congratulations, sir.
Nice.
Somebody
do you
actually
want to
knows
trade?
what I've worked on.
Do you want to trade? I would like that coffee cup. Do you want this?
And then the University of Washington and a few others put together an amazing card game to teach people that have no idea what hacking is, how to hack. So, control hack, it is a little heavy. So, I gotta ask, who's the person who has the most kids? That's
Here?
not me. What are their ages? All right.
7 kids? Wait, you have 7?
Wait, who has 7 kids?
Zach, you have 4 kids?
I thought he had 7 kids.
No, I think
You have 7 kids?
Oh, that's no fun.
You have 6? All right, 6 kids out.
Get busy,
So,
Zach. Win those cards
Turn
back.
your kids into a bunch of hackers.
Liam, did you
Which
want
is
to
a
there?
tie for Caswell,
again-
by the way.
Our party tonight, get a wristband, 1 per person, go to registration. At some point during the day, you do not have to run. There should be plenty enough for everybody. Open bar. So,
Top shelf open bar.
yeah. At a venue that actually should be able to hold almost all of us. So in the audience, I see a lot of CTF experts, some of the people that have put on some of the best hacking contests on the planet. So I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. So CTF, the Heart of Hacker Gaming. This is a panel. So on the panel, we have people that you saw the SkyDogCon CTF intro video. So also represented Ken Shoto. So PPP for their CMU's CTF. Ghost in the Shellcode. In case you're aware, Ghost in the Shellcode is running in the back corner of the conference and is ongoing right now. And PPP is currently leading it. And my name is Kaz, and I was a part of DD Tech, and we ran Binjitsu for the last 4 years, and I've officially retired, so we get to sleep. So with that, hand it over to Branson. Go ahead and get started. I don't know how many.
Yeah, just the last one.
2 wins.
2?
Not just 1. Wait, how long ago was it that you won, sir?
The year before you, and the year before that, and the year before that.
Okay, good answer, sir.
Well, that's a good answer. So my name is Branson Matheson. I'm been doing Shmoocon here for a while. I will say we are the babies on this stage, without a doubt. We have got 1 of them under our belt that we had a lot of fun putting together. But this came from a discussion I had with Heidi, and I said, we thought about doing a talk about what it took to put on our CTF. And she said, you know what, you should do a panel and have everybody talk about what it takes to do a CTF. And so that's kind of where this idea was born. And I contacted Tyler and a couple of the other guys, and we put together this group to I'm going to ask them some questions, and then I'm going to field some questions from you guys. Like you said, I see some other people out here who've done it before. How many people have participated in a CTF before? Show of hands. Oh, yeah, so we got the right people in here. How many people have run a CTF in here?
Cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's really great.
Everyone come on up.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do with the panel, he kind of gave names out. I'd like to kind of go through and have each group from each CTF represented kind of talk about them. I'm not representing Duplicity for today. I'm going to let these 2 handle that. So from the Sandwich Man first.
And I will say this, if you have any questions at any given point, raise your hand.
Raise
I
your
will come
hand.
get a mic. We are streaming video today for people on the internet that weren't able to win the F5 race. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll come bring you a mic, and that way we can, people on the internet can hear what you're saying.
Please do.
I'm Cyphertex, and I've played TTS for many years. Started on this gentleman's team down here, Mr. Atlas, on last place at DEF CON, and then have most recently played with Hate's Irony. And we've run Ghost in the Shellcode now. This is our 4th year at Shmoocon that we've been running that, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm Hacker Joe with another batshit crazy Conshoto member. If you were at the panel last night, we started playing CTF way too long ago, and when we won it with DigRev out at DEF CON, a little longer after that, a few of us decided we could run a better game, and we took over from the Ghetto Hackers and ran DEF CON and CTF for several years. Also ran Hack.lu in Luxembourg and a couple other ones around.
What was the
Oh yeah, Interzone in Georgia. So we were at about 15 games.
I'm Tyler Nicewander, so I'm from the Plaid Parliament of Poning, which is a university team, so we're all young. Sorry, guys. So I've been playing CTFs just for about 4 years, but we, for the past 2 years, have run Plaid CTF, which is our own CTF. It's about pretty popular online, a few hundred people playing, so.
You should mention you won most of them too.
We also, yeah, so we win lots of CTFs, which is why we decided to start hosting our own. It's a little bit more challenging.
Cass?
So I am Kaz. I am part of the group that ran Binjitsu for the last 4 years, DEF CON CTF, otherwise known as the World Championship of Hacking.
Brett?
Hi, I'm Brett Thorson, part of Duplicity. I don't know what else am I supposed to say? Yeah, thank you very much. Good night.
Tip your waitress.
My name is Liam Randall. I was on the Duplicity team, and our CTF came out of participating in a lot of CTFs and wanting to do something really, really different. We felt that people are, as much work as people need on the red side, they need even more work on the blue side. So we wanted to do a game where you got to work on what we felt people's largest deficiencies were. So ours was that's why we came up with our whole mixed red-blue contest.
Yeah, so why did you make your CTF? And what style?
So our CTF, I mean, I don't know, I guess the kind of the traditional Jeopardy board style, which is just, problem categories and then problem values. So we mixed it up a little bit. We did some stuff. Last year we had actually an RPG-based game board playing stuff around. So, I mean, our main thing is we try to mix up challenges. Ours is attack only because it's easier mostly. But so we kind of mixed it up with lots of weird challenges. We felt a little bad because I don't think anyone solved, maybe some teams solved about half the challenges, but it was pretty tough. But our thing is kind of very new things and hopefully learning a lot if you do our CTF. But yeah, quantum computing was in there. Just throwing that out there.
Wow.
All right, at Conchoto, we actually built 2 games. So when we built the first qualifier sets for DEF CON, we were the first one that started up with the Jeopardy style board of how we qualify. And it came from the challenge of how do you qualify 400 teams who want to sit at 8 tables at DEF CON. It's a pain in the ass to run, by the way. Try throwing something up on the internet and letting 400 teams hack at it and keep control. Right, Bob? Lots of rewriting database code. And our second game was when we decided the main game to build, we took over from the game the Ghetto Hackers had, and we decided there were a couple of things that we wanted to change about the way the game ran. One, we wanted to make it a little more realistic of what happens if you walk in and take over apps you don't know and have to secure them. And we wanted it to be it's 8 teams head-on-head, your attack and defense. So you're running, every team ran in their own virtual servers, and we penalize them for taking their services down. So it's no fun if you have an attack and defense game if all the services disappear. And one year we even tried to kick it up a notch and make it more interactive by allowing individuals to compete in the game against all the teams. And I think the quote was, it was like ball cancer. Would that be right? I think that was your quote. It was absolutely miserable to play as an individual against a team of people writing weaponized exploits all day against you. So,
Yeah, we're lazy, so Ghost in the Shell code is pure offense, Jeopardy style, because running a bunch of infrastructure and doing, especially the full spectrum style attack and defense that DEF CON finals are, is way too hard. And I try to have a life, although I don't really. So I just don't have the time for it. So ours is pure offense. We just go for fun challenges and kind of offense, individual little quirky fun things that we want people to hear about.
So what drove, I'm going to kind of move across to maybe Cass, what drove you guys to make your CTF the way you made it? Why did you do it? What was the impetus?
I know. The thing that I did was made challenges that interested me. So my role on DD Tech was making challenges. I didn't make the infrastructure for the game. I just made things that challenged other hackers. So if you look at all the services I've written over the last 4 years, they were all things that I thought would fuck with people. Yeah, evil has. I think the phrase that has been used at work, because I work with Jordan, and their team that played was that they called me a sadistic fuck. I thought if I could make the hacking community frustrated enough and challenged enough, then it could make the game enjoyable. So my focus was fuck with the other teams. So there were things that would fuck with your disassembler. There were things that would crash your analysis tools. There were services that required you to write new disassemblers. Anything I could do to fuck with the teams that were playing. That was my goal.
So what was your target audience, I guess? How accomplished were the people that participated in your CTF? Did you guys do like they did and have 400 and bring it down to 8?
So there's the qualifiers that had a couple thousand people try and qualify, down to this last year we ran 20 teams head to head. And we were targeting the best on the planet. So the people that, professionals doing CNO for a living, the best CTF teams on the planet, H-Irony, PPP, those from Kenshoto that actually play CTF again, and the best hackers that play the game. That was our goal, was to fuck with the best of the best.
You guys?
So we didn't really know who our target audience was going to be. SkyDogCon is kind of new, and we didn't really, and they hadn't had a CTF before, so we weren't sure who was going to show up. So what we tried to do is just make as many targets to defend and attack as possible. So we had everything from, on the defending side, essentially it was a system admin. It was his first day at work, and everyone else is gone. And he gets this voicemail from his boss who's on the run saying, "Hey, can you just go ahead and secure everything?" And then later on, he's like, "Hey, can you just go ahead and burn the place because we're going down?" So we had everything from passwords, underneath the keyboard to passwords written on dry erase boards. We had phone systems. Liam brought some cameras.
Yeah, we really tried to replicate a working office environment. And I think one of our big things that we wanted to do was, again, we had a whole continuum of challenges. We put, 100 easy things in here to do, things we thought were easy, most of which were not touched. 100 middle-of-the-road things in here that we thought were interesting, and some really hard, interesting challenges. And we had some people show up and really impress us, and we had a lot of people that were there to learn. So the people that were there to learn, we would sit with them and really try to focus and give a lot of one-on-one time.
Yeah.
Tyler? Oh.
Poor online people can't hear us.
Yeah, all right.
Chew on the mic.
So I think when we started our CTF, this has been after we had been playing for a few years and winning quite a few of them. Our thing was just we tried to play every CTF we could. And, we'd kind of go through and say, like, man, I really wish, like, this challenge that started off in this way ended in this fashion. And so we just kind of write that down. And then a few years later, we just kind of went through everything that we thought could have been done better or differently, and tried to do that ourselves. Our main goal is, CTFs are really, in my opinion, about learning new things, because no one goes in there knowing everything that's going to happen, because it's kind of impossible.
Not even the people who make them.
Yeah. No, we learn stuff. So, sometimes if you have something you've been working on for a while and you're like, I really wish I knew an elegant solution to it, put it in a CTF and have someone smarter than you solve it.
Raise your hand if you've run a CTF and made a challenge because you wanted to see other people solve it better than you. Because
it works out pretty well. But so our main thing was just, trying to get new people interested in CTFs and trying to get people to learn new things, because that's what CTFs are all about, and trying to make challenges that have the right amount of banging your head against the wall. So, I don't know.
yeah, so it should be noted that there's a whole sort of culture of like the online CTFs especially, I think, and that's more of kind of what Tyler's coming out of as opposed to more of the rest of us on here, where, there's literally ctftime.org that is like tracking every CTF that's ever played, and it's this ranking system, and it's only the young guys can play it because it takes too much time. So a lot of us old guys, that's why we're like, we're gonna run one CTF, we're gonna play one CTF, like we don't have time for that anymore. But it's a whole world, and there's tremendously smart people that learn just entirely in these online games. And so it's absolutely one of the most critical things is that you be able to learn. And I think there's different places, different CTFs aim, but they're all trying to teach people new things. And even, yeah, my favorite thing is either when I learn something new or when I make somebody read a new spec that they've never read before, quite literally, or you know, disassemble a new file format or learn a quirk about an application that no one had any idea existed. Like that's the best thing about a CTF challenge.
Yeah, I think, and it kind of all those things apply that everybody said. It's funny when you try and run one that's fully interactive, offense and defense, and you bring all the equipment on site. You heard Bruce say yesterday how pissed off his UPS driver was delivering a whole truck full of equipment. You should have seen how pissed off my UPS driver showed up when he didn't believe the invoice that said 42 boxes at 3,800 pounds. And one guy showed up to load over a ton of equipment to ship to Vegas. He was pretty pissed by the end of the day. But we learned to take everything we needed out with us. So, but some of the fun challenges are definitely the ones you don't exactly know how somebody else is going to attack. And there's the most interesting side of running a CTF is watching what people are doing and realizing, shit, I didn't expect that. So there's a lot of fun to it, and also it's really fun at the end of the con looking at everything you put out there that absolutely nobody paid any attention to. Really low-level holes in the game, like having the password on the switch.
What do you think I'm going to use next year?
Yeah, exactly. How many do you get to recycle? But you know, stupid things I did on the infrastructure side building it was having the password on all the switches the same as the password of their VM. And in 5 years, nobody ever tried it.
So that leads me to a good topic. How many, when we, and I'm putting my duplicity hat on for just a second. When we developed ours, we struggled mightily with the number of targets and achievements versus the amount of time available per run and things. And it is no joke, we overbid by large amounts, but we had such a large attack surface that we were trying to cover so many different areas, everything from physical and everything else. So how much time do you guys, how do you judge that, A? B, how much time do you actually put in, and this is more for the audience to understand, how much time do you put in to build a CTF? Tyler, I'll let you. Well, yeah.
So I guess for kind of a point of reference, so my team, PPP, we probably start working maybe 6 months before our CTF is held, and we have maybe 10 to 12 people working, let's say, 4 to 8 hours a week. And so, I don't know, if you count up man hours, I'm not going to do the math, but it's a lot. But so there's a ton of work we put in, and part of that includes, QAing, making sure that each one of your problems is solvable and trying to figure out how long you expect someone to take to solve the problem. And when we do this, our goal is sort of to basically make sure that it's possible for each problem to be solved during the competition, but do something so maybe one team would solve about 2/3 of the problems if they were a reasonable size. Because it's kind of a horrible thing, in our opinion, if someone gets to the end of a 48-hour competition and they solved everything. They should be staying up and
They've
not
solved
sleeping.
2/3 of my problems already. We have more we got to go unleash afterwards right now, just for reference. So.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of part of the point is just kind of stressing everyone out and forcing them to their limits. And if you finish early, then that's no fun. So, but it's a really tough. I mean, because you never know what kind of clever solutions someone's going to come up with, and so you always kind of have to build in a little leeway and throw in some extra problems to make sure that even the people that are a lot smarter than you won't be able to finish.
But I think the underlying piece of that I think is most important is testing. So I think it's kind of implicit that to know how hard a problem is, you have to find out, and the author of a challenge is never the one that should test it. It's one of like the absolute truths of CTFs that no matter how hard or easy you think it is, somebody else will either find it way harder or way easier because you made it, and you just cannot be the judge of it. So you have to test it. You have to have a number of other people. You'll find solutions you didn't intend. You'll find things that were blindingly obvious to you that nobody else gets, and so you have to kind of have a lot of testing to be able to adjust things appropriately. And then once you have that, then you have a better idea of how many challenges, how much, how long is it going to last, assuming you know your audience.
Hey, Jordan. Hey, what about the time that you guys spend on your CTF?
So time.
And the crew.
So I spend all year just getting ideas, and we'll come up with challenges throughout the year, kind of sprinkle them in. And then for us, it's really the last 2-3 months that we kind of crunch time and come together, and we'll put the numbers of people participate is right around 12. We've had as small as like 6-7 people putting it on, as many as 15. But it's really hard to gauge the overall. And that's, again, remember I said earlier we were lazy. That's, yeah, the only like 5-10 hours a week for a couple months from 8 people is the lazy one. The real ones are like the ones that take a lot more infrastructure, a lot more effort. That's why we do pure challenge. Like DD Tech and Kenshoto style is insane.
Yeah, you do.
How much time do you guys spend on finding the most messed up videos and music to play during your CTF?
Bob, you want to answer that?
We normally delegate that to one person. That's how we did it. Like I did that for a couple of years for Kenshoto. Other people have fed me stuff, but
So the sheep are your fault?
DD Tech was dedicated to one guy, and oh my God, the things that we didn't play that he sent us on our private comms. Oh my God.
So you should mention what those videos are, because people out in the audience aren't going to have any ideas.
Go into that room.
Go into that room. There's a bunch of pseudo porn being played in the. So hopefully there not be actual nipples this year.
I'm keeping a close eye on it.
So your close eye
I'm
last year,
here
not
right,
so good?
I'm not here right now, so I don't know what's going on right now, but when I'm in there, I enforce the PG-13-ish rule.
And
So I keep my
harks
son
back,
out of there.
yeah, harks back to Kenshoto days. If you want to Google for a exemplar movie, My Anus is Bleeding.
G.I. Joe PSAs. So, yeah, and it's funny when you talk about rating the challenges.
I'm getting there.
When we put our challenges out to build and how long we waste on the team, we always had levels. And for those that played when Kenshoto wrote the CTFs, you're ultimately familiar with the mind-bleeding Kenshoto level challenges. And they were designed to absolutely waste a rock star's entire weekend. Because we know every team has a rock star, right, guys? And we wrote challenges that they'd get into that they'd say, fuck, I gotta solve this. 18 hours later, God, I gotta write a whole disassembler. I gotta write my own framework around IDA. Shit.
We have one right now, exactly like that, yeah.
So it's always fun to throw one of those out there, and then at the end of the second night, when somebody walks in and says, I solved it, damn it, you know that you wasted his whole con on that one challenge, and you feel really good.
Throw the party afterwards, and they come up and go, "Fuck you."
Yeah, 3 services hooked to each other with debuggers, exchanging keys randomly in pseudo in memory, I don't know.
Can you talk about red herrings and blind alleys?
Yes? Can we get there in a second?
With Duplicity CTF, where there was a crew of about 6 of us with various levels of effort and intensity, but it is an ungodly amount of work. I mean, to stand up an entire red and blue environment was an incredible challenge, and we were, I think our production network was around, 35 VMs, plus phones, cameras, PBXs.
Real machines?
Real machines, switches, routers. We had the works. So I hope that people really appreciate how much time the people that plan these things put into it, because it's a whole lot of work, and it's largely a thankless effort. So.
Do you want to talk about red herrings, since you're over here?
Who, me?
Yeah, you. Since you were the storyline guy.
Yeah, so we kind of wanted to have a story around what we did, and it was hard to make a video and not have people go, oh, what's in the background or whatever, and I don't think we had too many of that. I don't really have more to say. Am I supposed to say more?
That's a really big problem with CTF. I mean, I think that is one of the biggest complaints. The biggest insult you can give somebody is that their challenge was, it required guessing, right? And you could too easily get stuck in false trails. Like the biggest insult is that required guessing. Like it should, the best challenges are really hard, and sometimes there'll be a flash of insight you'll have to get to make a little bit of a challenge. But you should kind of know what you're supposed to do, right? Depending on the skill level, like you want people to know where they generally need to go. And that's really hard. So again, that kind of goes back to testing. You have to test it to see those and catch those. And then, so one of my pet peeves is like cookie trails, like crumbs in the maze, is make multiple steps that are sort of discrete steps in one particular challenge. And so, okay, well, I solved this little piece, and that was hard, but now I've solved it, and I know I've made progress. And now I need to go to the next one. As far as like eliminating false trails, that's just hard. You can do it with hints. You can do it with, again, mostly QA and testing it and finding the things that we have explicitly. I had one during the warm-up round. Ghost in the Shell Code does an online warm-up round that was a really obnoxious one involving what crypto is involved in a poem. It was a limerick, basically. It was a limerick that asked you to find some crypto. And everybody who looked that up and Googled it first went to the DECSS, or was it ECS? Yeah, it was ECSS that had been encoded into sort of poetry form. And so we specifically wrote another paragraph of the limerick that said it's not DECSS, basically, because I wanted you to find the Apple key that they use in their BIOS that's a limerick that's in the firmware. You either, so that was, to me, like, again, I tested it and realized, oh, I didn't mean for people to go down that complete false trail. So then I had to actually add a hint and change the challenge to eliminate that. But it's hard. That still happens. There's still going to be things that...
In duplicity, since basically the defending team got access to the room, and we left a lot of stuff kind of around that we were hoping that they were going to find and eliminate, so that when the red team came into the room, they wouldn't find passwords in their keyboards and stuff. What we found is a lot of teams came in and put in their own red herrings, and they were writing strange stuff on the board. And what was funny is then when the red team came in, they completely ignored all of it. So, I mean, there were teams that spent a lot of time, like, you know, they hid stuff. We had a Bible, like they hid stuff in the Bible. And they were writing pages down and Post-it notes everywhere. And just what every team came in was like, bypass.
Inflatable animals, dildos. I mean, there were people with all kinds of leave-behinds, track phones. I mean, that is a good aspect of the red herring, was that there was a whole element that was brought in with, you know, in a competitive environment, the teams were really going after each other in a lot of interesting ways that I did not anticipate at all.
The one team trolled the other team so bad. They had passwords in a blow-up doll in a spot that was hard to get in with your fingers.
In all three spots, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was so funny to watch them dealing with that. So, Kaz, do you have any comments on this? Red herrings or? No.
I think the part where he was sadistic, right? He likes those because he wants you to be a little bit frustrated when you're not.
Yeah, I would say at Conchoda, we built more than a few.
We did have one this year. So how many of you were at the Benjitsu at the beginning of the game this year? So on the table of every team was a printer.
AKA a
There-
stalling tactic.
No, it was not a stalling tactic. If you actually paid attention to the printer, there was a piece of paper on it that had an icon. If you used something like the Google image recognition software, it would tell you that it was, I don't remember what vendor it was. Say again? So it was an NFC tag. So then you just had to look for the NFC tag that was attached to the printer. It was actually just underneath the piece of paper. If you scan the NFC tag, it was the password to decrypt the encrypted image on the USB thumb drive we had given everybody. We didn't buy all those printers. When we walked into the hotel and we were setting up in the area, our staging area where we had all of our servers and whatnot, there was a stack of 150 printers. And we're like, well, what the It was, yeah, they were all Word series of poker printers. They all had some pieces of the guts ripped out, but they were doing nothing. And we're like, what could we do to fuck with all the teams? I know, let's put one on each of their tables. And so the number of teams that actually tried to take them apart and...
People found O-Day. People found old documents on the printers. Like,
We realized it wasn't part of the competition when we found World Series of Poker tax forms.
So by show of hands, if you guys, those of you that have participated in CTFs, do you find the, how shall I put this, the obtuse humor of some of the people that put it together, some of the things that they put in the system, do you enjoy that? Is that a yes? Do you find it more frustrating because it slows you down to the real goals?
During or afterwards? Define obtuse humor.
Huh?
Define obtuse humor.
Printers.
So I think in general, when there's an element of like this kind of stuff throughout the competition, it's fun because you're really deep in trying to figure something out, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, sheep fucking or something, you know, like whatever, right? But when you need to know that humor in order to solve one of the questions, and this is kind of what Jordan was saying, then it's really frustrating. Because if you're not necessarily thinking about that, you're thinking about what's the technical thing, what's the system that I need to understand in order to get this. And when it's about guessing that, like, oh, it's bacon, you know, like that just really pisses people off because there's nothing, you had to guess, and that's not fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten from sheep fucking to bacon. There's
Why?
It's the wrong meat.
You're obviously
Wrong
not played any DEF CON CTF game in the last 4 years.
There's a question back there.
Give me a sec.
So it's not so much a question as to add to what that dude was just saying. When you have to know the person putting on the contest in order to solve the problem, like if anyone's done lost challenges at DEF CON, you have to know like, oh, Lost loves Korean and left-handed threads, otherwise you'll never solve any of his problems. I think that's a big issue, whereas like the obtuse humor that's just in general, that's like putting a printer there just to fuck with someone.
So you're suggesting everything should be contained within the CTF? You shouldn't have to do the research before or that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
You gotta know your audience.
Basically, like, because I don't know any of you, so if I had to do one of your CTFs and, like, know something about you in order to solve it, that's a problem.
You ever played Seesaw CTF with the recon challenge? You learn your targets very closely.
Well, so I mean, I think that's kind of important.
And your target's spouses?
Yeah. But I think it's an important point that, you know, if you're doing a CTF and you're trying to learn something, you shouldn't go in, I mean, part of, you know, not going in knowing everything, I mean, you shouldn't go in being like, well, I know Jordan's doing this, I know he loves like kind of these weird spec problems, and so if I see a problem and it looks like it's written by Jordan, I should probably just start like looking through old specs. I mean, like it's useful for teams, but there should be something in there that doesn't require that, because I mean, you don't want to get stuck because you've never met Jordan before, because most people don't have that wonderful opportunity.
I think another thing to keep in mind is that there's a continuum of challenges out there. You know, and obviously they range dramatically in what people are targeting. You know, even when you say CTF, what does that mean to different people? I mean, everything from malware challenges to, you know, disassembly, actual pen testing, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. So it's a big blanket term, and it means a lot of things. It means different things to everybody. And there are a ton of resources out there that we looked into to kind of model after, and what we tried to do was something that we didn't think that there was a market serving that. And I really appreciate and respect what the other gentlemen up here do. I mean, you know, it's really hard, and I look forward to actually working with people out in the audience today, I mean, on continuing to make neat challenges, because I think it's fun and it's something that we all need to do to make ourselves better. I learned a ton doing it, and we hope that the people that participate learn a ton doing it.
Yeah, so, and
Got a
this is
question?
something we struggled with. Oh, go, sorry, didn't see him.
I was just wondering, you guys are touching on like cultural issues, right? We're
I'm
talking
getting
about
there.
hacker culture. Do you guys take specific steps for international cultural differences?
I think, are you getting to that later?
No, go ahead and touch on it.
So yeah, I mean,
Do you?
But I think that's a really tough thing. So especially for all the online competitions where, you know, most of the teams are US, but then you have all the Koreans and the Russians. And so, I mean, it's really hard if you have, I mean, so one example is, you know, maybe you have something with like a poem or like a common saying in the US, and you're like, well, you know, we QA'd it with our team and everyone got it right away because everyone knows the story, but then you give it to some Korean team and they translate it and then they try searching for it and they're like, what the hell is this? So I mean, it's a really tough thing to make sure, like, trying to go in with really zero knowledge, and it's hard to kind of zero out your cultural knowledge, but I think that's really important, mostly for online competitions, because I mean, you can't expect that, you know, your other international teams are going to have the same cultural knowledge, and it's not really fair if you're trying to make a competition about hacking that it ends up being about like where you were born. So
I think it was the second year we ran that the Korean team qualified. Was it the second year we ran CTF at DEF CON, a Korean team qualified for the first time. We had a completely foreign team sitting at DEF CON playing the game, and we realized about halfway into day one that they didn't understand half of what we gave them. And it became very obvious that we had to rethink how we had written things, because you write things with a lot of jargon that have no translation. And some things in the industry are in English and other language. Other things just don't translate. Having a challenge question that was what kind of bike does Metro ride? That doesn't translate at all to some kids in
People
Korea.
look for motorcycles, not for, or
Yeah.
people look for bicycles, not motorcycles, right? So that's
Yeah.
an example of if you just translate it.
So as we went forward with the games, we were a lot more cautious on how we wrote things that they could translate and you could throw them in. But we also found that you still had to walk around, as organizers of the conference, you had to walk around to teams and see if they were struggling with something that you did wrong, making the game and presenting it to them, to give them a more fair footing with the rest of the teams.
Just one other thing to add. I mean, so our team plays in a lot of Korean CTFs. I've been to Korea about half dozen times playing CTFs by now. And one of the most important things for us is to bring a Korean. I mean, we hit competition challenges so frequently where, we Google Translate it and we think we know what we're doing, and someone goes in and says like, well, you're really supposed to read it this way, and then it'll make sense. I mean, so part of it is, sit in IRC or something, and if you hear people get stuck on the part that, requires that they knew some phrase or something, then you can help them along with that part, because you want to make sure that they're not getting stuck on the stupid things, they're getting stuck on the hard things.
One of the comments that Joe just made I like was the comment about being willing to accept that you were wrong. I think there is a really important balance of humility and arrogance to this. There tends to be an arrogance of like, I'm the organizer, I made it, but really you have to be willing to be wrong, because you're going to be, first of all. Like, you will have made errors, you'll make mistakes. And so it is really important to strike that balance. If you don't want to give away too many hints, you want people to struggle and suffer and have, like, if it's not growth, if it wasn't hard, if you didn't earn it, then it's no fun, right? Like, if you just go tell everybody the answers, that's not interesting. That's not why we play the game. So you have to have that kind of balance.
So how many of all of us that have put together a CTF, how many have put out a challenge that was totally fucking broken? And how did you all fix it? So I know, like, this year I put out a challenge that was part of the Benjitsu that you couldn't exploit as is, and I had to write another service and drop it on the game mid-game.
We assumed if you're lead enough, you'll figure it out.
The shut up and hack is the Vizzy's mechanism of it's not broken.
Just keep hacking. We might have replaced a binary in the middle of the night once.
Or every year.
Or a Visual Studio, or not Visual, or a libc function call. Metro.
So when we put these together, a challenge is we put together all these flags that we have to do of some sort or another, whether it's picking a lock, or you got to find a file, or you got to do shellcode, or whatever you're doing. And one of the things we struggled with is, how do you rate a particular flag? So you guys as contestants, you come in and you do this thing and you think, oh wow, this was really hard, or this was really easy. From our point of view, it's a little different, even when you have people QA them, because even the QAs tend to be a little more clueful and have some more clues about what the system is involving. So that's one thing we would struggle with, and I wanted to get comments from you guys on that.
So when we were doing Duplicity, we tried to come up with maybe a scoring engine, but then we realized that we're not doing like SQL, and I mean, there were SQL injection attacks, but there wasn't like, the service went down, the service went up. We realized we'd have to make a lot of infrastructure just to monitor things that went up and down. And so I also didn't have the time to do that. So we kind of, I was supposed to come up with a scoring sheet, essentially, but just because of timing and whatever, we didn't. So what ended up happening is we ended up taking notes on each team. So like, as all of the systems were reverting back to baseline, we just kind of huddled together and was like, hey, this is what I saw this team do, and this was really cool. So it was pretty clear at the end, like who was going to be, like this team, you could tell like they came in and they attacked every problem. They had really good teamwork, but this team, like, they really just nailed all the hard tech stuff. So we ended up kind of basing it on style, and luckily nobody came up to us and was like, show me the score sheets.
With the storyline, it was more of the whose line is it anyway sort of scoring. The points don't really matter. Because for ours, you were participating in a scenario, as opposed to, I think, a lot of the other challenges where it's discrete. Like, did you solve problems 1 through 5? Yes, you did. Check, check, check. So again, there's a continuum of of scoring problems out there.
I mean, we did have one group come in and, it was an office setting, and one group said, all right, just disconnect everything from the internet. Well, I mean, that kind of messes up your red team, so we're like, kind of have to make sure things are done. Or like, can we put super glue in the locks? And I'm like, well, then nobody could get into your office building. So, good A for effort, but not really functional.
Yeah, I think we've struggled for each year to reevaluate how we scored the whole competition, which was interesting. And that whole side of if you take down your services so the offensive can't compete was one we found very particularly important. So what we settled on was that was an SLA, and it was a percentage that multiplied by your entire score. So you could be as badass as you want on offense, but if you were down the whole game, your score was 0.
Yeah.
So you had to keep some balance of keeping systems up. If your SLA had to have some positive value, or at least be equal to the other teams to keep your offensive score high enough. And then with each level, it was interesting, you take each challenge and rate them. There's more than one challenge that we thought was a good, solid, medium-level challenge, and somebody solved it in seconds and realized, shit, there's a program on the internet that does that already. Damn it.
Kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, though, about the other teams being involved in that. Man, I'm hungover. I forgot what I was going to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's two extremes, I would say. And so I like the flexibility and so I call it more holistic, whatever approach to like analyzing teams' results and scenario based. And I think in the other far extreme, you have really complicated, over-engineered rule systems, which is one of my personal pet peeves. I'm not gonna. He called him out. I'm not gonna call him out by name. CTF. Sorry, Big No. But there's really complicated rule systems where you actually spend more time trying to understand how to score points than you do in the technical challenges, and that's kind of a trap that people, I think, there's multiple games that will get into that where it's trying to figure out the rules is actually more work than.
6-hour ones, right?
Yeah.
It's a CTF that's only 6 hours long. Like super complicated rules, it goes for 6 hours.
And it's like, great, I've just spent 5 of them trying to figure out the optimum strategy in 1 hour playing it. That was not fun, right? So don't make the game, if that makes sense. Like, the game itself should be relatively clear, obviously, but you should know what you're supposed to do, and then just go do it, and that should be the majority of the game. So that's one of my pet peeves.
I wrote it down this time. Every system is particularly designed to give you the results that it gives. So you get what you incentivize. And one of the feedback loops that we find ourselves caught in were teams spending, instead of working on problems, they were spending too much time attacking the other teams or doing fake leave behinds. And then we kind of realized mid-game it was like, okay, well, the teams are learning from each other, and this big negative feedback cycle started reverberating in the system, and it was not something that we intended or were necessarily happy with. But at the same time, that was what they felt was the best way for them to score points.
So to your point, finding ways to scale it so that they do what you want them to do. And I think that was the part, we struggled with it before the CTF, trying to figure out how to incentivize people to do the things we wanted them to do instead of doing what they ended up doing, trolling the other team and putting blow-up dolls all over the place.
But find a way to do it in the game, so it's not like, here's this game you have to play, and by the way, we're the people who made it, and here's what you should do. Like, we wanted to come up with a way to work it into the game operation and storyline.
Yeah, and it's funny also, it's really important when you run a game to have played several of them.
Yes.
And some of the things that made our game different was experiences we had spending our time hacking the game when the ghetto hackers ran it, and doing things like realizing that their system did a serial poll, and after it scored everything on our system, one of the last things it did was pull down our webpage, and if I put 50 gigs of porn on the webpage, that their crawler got stuck on it and couldn't poll any of the other teams for points. About six hours later, they came and told me to take it down immediately when they realized why their server crashed every cycle.
So did you already have the 50 gigs with you?
Well, yes.
Who doesn't? So there was an interesting comment that was made. One of the more important things is not just how does letting the teams know how to score and letting the teams know how they're supposed to compete in the game, but especially in competitions like the competition running in the back of the conference today, and Benjitsu and the Kenshoto's game was telling the audience, the people that aren't actually hacking on the game today, so people like you all who are obviously not playing in the CTF today. Obviously not, because you're sitting in this talk.
Jacob is right there. He's still playing it.
Okay, so maybe there's one guy with a laptop running IDA. But letting everybody else know what's going on, who's doing well, where they're doing, what team just did something awesome, what team just broke the game. That sort of information share to get that out into the audience, because I didn't start playing CTF because somebody dragged me in. I started playing CTF because the game that was interesting. There was stuff going on, and I was able to see the competition because of the scoring mechanisms that people had up and learn from.
With that, there's also a whole other challenge, though, that's interesting, is your scoring mechanism can't be real time. If your scoring mechanism is real time, you destroy the tactics of the teams playing.
For a red team, blue team exercise.
Yeah.
For one that's
Agreed.
pure red, you're okay, and pure blue, you're okay. But yeah, for anyone where the teams are playing each other and not just a game, then you absolutely, that's.
Yeah. So depending on the game, you kind of have to have an artificial lag or randomness to the scoring, which sometimes can frustrate the teams. And so we had a private scoreboard and the public scoreboard. So the private scoreboard was a little more real time most of the time, but the public one that displayed on the wall was never actually real time, so that when you saw owns and points happening on the board, they were some level of minutes in the past, because you don't want the other teams that see, well, the red team's owning me right now, let me go change that service.
Well, yeah, except for Hack Fortress, right, where having the live scoreboard really, I mean, that enhances both the game and the view. We only have about 10 minutes left. I don't want to, I've got several more questions I can throw at it. Is there anybody in the audience that really has a question they want to ask? Hands?
Wait a second.
Way in the back.
Make him run too. That's really awesome.
Run, Forrest, run!
Die.
Is there anything you guys do to compensate for a team size or make it less effective to have an overwhelming team size?
So I guess one of the first things, so you see this like in GITS when, for example, when it opened up, you could see that the problems were basically serialized, and so there's certainly an advantage to having a larger team. Just more eyes are obviously always going to help. But if you can serialize the problems or have fewer open at a time, for example, so if you're having a competition with 100 problems and you open all 100 at once, then whoever has the biggest team is probably going to win. But if you do something like, you have maybe 5 challenges open at a time, then it's kind of bottlenecking people down. And so this is really good for compensating for huge teams and stuff like that.
The other thing that does, and again, this is not necessarily immediately obvious, but the other thing that you do by having the leader unlock the new challenges when they solve one they unlock new, and this dates back to the Kenshoto Jeopardy style board. The nice thing about that as well is it artificially compresses the game a little bit. It keeps the leader from running off into the lead as much, because they're only working on 1 or 2 problems, whereas the other teams may have if the further behind you are, the more problems you can work on. And so you have a better chance of being able to catch up more quickly, or bigger teams can help you more, but only if you're not winning. And so it kind of keeps the leaderboard a little bit artificially constrained, which is sort of nice. You want, in the competitive aspect of it, you like the fact that normally you would want that. I don't know what the score is now. PPP was running away with it anyways, but hopefully in our game it'll compress back up a little bit as the Europeans wake up this morning.
Yeah, and that's part of the design part. So when you actually sit down and start talking about how you're going to do the design of the CTF, do you have fixed size teams? Do you have unlimited size teams? Are they across the internet? Da-da-da-da-da. Huh?
Yes, it's hard.
Well, for us, we just didn't have, our game wasn't on the internet.
Yeah, our games,
So-
they were there. So we said 4 people in the room, that's it.
Yeah, so we did 8 at the table at DEF CON, but we know that teams set up military-grade RF radios to rooms with entire squadrons of folks. I don't know where I might have seen that. But you know that the teams are bringing them in. Heck, when I played at Interzone, I remember setting up a circuit off of my phone to bounce in guys in California. I was the only guy playing at the table and had 4 DigRev guys coming in over my cell phone joining the network. People were like, "How are you kicking ass?" I'm like, "I'm awesome, it's automated."
So why should people do CTFs? This is kind of a good wrap-up question.
You're always going to learn something. I don't know. I've always been kind of. I always thought the CTFs were kind of imposing. I'm not much of a SQL injection guy. I'm not a reverse engineering kind of guy. But there's a CTF out there for everyone. So I mean, there's even like the social engineering, and I think that would be a lot of fun. I'm more of a protocol guy. So even if you go to one and you're absolutely awful, chances are the people running it are going to be like, "There's no way in hell you're going to win. So let me let me teach you something. At least that's what we did.
I think if anybody's ever worked on any high-pressure team or environment, whether it's in the military or at a startup or anything like that, there's a certain amount of bonding that happens on both sides of the ball in the game. And creating a CTF with people and then participating was a great way to make lifelong friends. I mean, you really get to know people well. You get frustrated when they let you down, and there's a competitive pressure to perform well and to design well.
Tyler?
I mean, I think learning is the main thing. I mean, people that come to our team, for example, as freshmen, since we're a university team and have never exploited a service before, by the time they leave, if they play CTFs for 4 years, I mean, they're able to string together ROP payloads basically while they're asleep. And I mean, it's just if you keep doing these, you'll keep learning things. No matter, even if you go in and you're completely confused, if you just stare at it and bang your head against the wall, you just kind of magically get smarter.
Or bald. Jordan?
I'd say that some of the most successful teams had a couple of similar qualities in that one is that everybody didn't try and do everything on the team. One of the things that's most successful when you go in and enter as a team is that you have some clearly defined roles. It doesn't mean that's what you have to do the whole game, but somebody has to be in charge, number one. Somebody has to go get coffee and alcohol, number two. And somebody has to go get In-N-Out burgers, number three. But beyond that, I mean, you do need people that have tasks, but you also need somebody who's in charge of coordinating it, because it's oftentimes that the organizers have built some stupid-ass challenge that's going to waste everybody's time, and somebody needs to pull people off of that sometimes and say, that's unsolvable, drop it. But it's 30 points. Fuck it, go on to these. There's 100 other points.
Those are the challenges you give to Eagle.
Yeah, we did. We wrote many just for him.
They said it already. You make friends for life. You learn more playing than running, I think, in a lot of ways, and it's a phenomenal experience.
And I don't know about you, but I started playing CTF to get away from the claustrophobia of DEF CON.
So thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. Only because I'm running it, and I can take this extra minute. If you log into feedback.shmoocon.org, I'm not saying give us 5s, but I am saying please do your reviews. It's really important to us. We use that information to pick your speakers for next year. So log on to feedback.shmoocon.org, please.
If anyone played in PCTF last year, they should come talk to me in the GITS room after.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Help yourself.
Talking about the white space. The Python and the white space did the same thing for the sample.